Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Africa's Brain Bank STEM Program Lesson 3. This morning, we will be discussing leadership development by design, and we are privileged to have an expert in this field. His name is Dr. Abdoulaye Mbengue, originally from Sierra Leone, and I am proud to say he's part of our management team. But I am going to hand over the mic to Dr. Abdoulaye Mbengue so he can introduce himself. And for those joining us for the first time, my name is Reverend Dr. Pam Fomenong. I'm originally from Cameroon, and I'm the visionary and CEO of Africa's Brain Bank and this program. Dr. Mbengue, over to you, sir.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Reverend Pam, and greeting colleagues and students. Can you see my screen, the first thing?
Clearly.
All right. Thank you. As our founder and CEO said it, today we will be not teaching, but exchanging on just to some concepts, what I will call just an introduction, to leadership fundamentals. I think that you already went through class from, Professor Bakayako the other day, and that will be very helpful for you going forward when you study or research any subject. If you follow his template, there's nothing that you cannot learn and master.
Dr. Mbengue, I think your audio is
practice and actually use to lift up other people. The one thing that I will say is that you are all born leaders. So I know that I'm at the hotel. I don't know if it's my internet, but let me. Okay, can you hear me?
You're fine now. Yes, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Now this session, usually we do the introduction in 32 hours. Sometimes we do it in 24 hours. We even do it for 10 hours. The minimum time is required is 4 hours. But I was told that you guys are exceptional, that 1 hour will be more than sufficient. Therefore, we'll try to do it in 1 hour. Again, when we talk about leadership, actually, if we had more interaction, I will let you kind of define it. But let me just tell you a little bit about my background. It's not that much, but at least I took the time to study leadership and try to understand it. Not because I wanted to teach it, but because at a very young age, I was very unhappy what I saw in my country, Senegal. Now, you said Sierra Leone, but it's not that far. We are all the same people, but I'm originally, but again, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Mali, Guinea, we are all from Africa, but we call it Senegal. And we are colonized by the French. And wherever I looked at the highest level, from the presidential office to the ministry to the university, there's always some French people, basically, quote unquote, advising our leaders. And it didn't sit well with me. And that's why when I graduated in 1989, long time ago, with a master in economic and business management, I was offered a scholarship to go to France. I declined, and I said, I'm coming to America. Now, keep in mind, I didn't speak any English. Unlike Professor Bakayoko, I neglected English when I was in Senegal, thought that I would never use it. But I ended up coming here because I wanted to learn more about as a system, as an organization, and perhaps one day return, try to help my people. And when I came here, I studied, again, did another master and did a doctoral program on organizational leadership. And my first book is Servant Leadership Vital for Organizational Success, was really based on my research. And the second book, Cultural Intelligence in Leadership, I wrote it quickly about a year and a half ago, after President Trump started talking about DEI and the negative connotation to diversity, equity and inclusion. And I said, I needed to write something to just remind people at the leadership level that promoting diversity, promoting equity or inclusion, you can change the word DEI to say by cultural intelligence. Because when you allow you, your workforce, your people, who they are, to bring different perspective to the workplace, it strengthens the organization, but not weaken. And as a leader, it is your job to promote that. And that's why I wrote the second book about cultural intelligence in leadership, just to remind leaders that diversity, inclusion, equity, those are kind of things that you need if you want to improve productivity. Now we will go a little bit quick because it's just 1 hour. We will just basically try to
Let me just
define.
say something. Dr. Meng, don't worry about the time. It's our air time.
Okay.
So take your time and
All
cover
right.
what you need to cover. Okay, please. Let me just make that.
All right. Now, the outline today, we just started with, the key definition. And I want to remind you that I will try to follow not quite Dr. Bakayi's approach, but he laid the groundwork for all of us. Is that what he showed the other day is what we call the first principle. And the first principle approach to any topic is how do you reduce that topic to its fundamental truth? Because for me, I struggle a lot on that, trying to understand. Even after I completed my doctoral program on leadership, I see morals. How would you apply them? How do you make sure that you give students a framework, a roadmap, like what Professor Bakker did, for you to learn on your own and to basically uncover what is within you, because you are already a leader. And understand it. That's why I always try to start with the fundamentals. Then I will briefly talk about the most popular leadership model, because whenever you pick up a book, you hear about visionary leadership, charismatic leadership, transactional leadership, transformational leadership. All leadership model, and in the end, you are kind of confused. Which one is bad leaders or good leaders? Or good leadership. I try to always use the word effective leadership, because in the end, what you want is that can you attain your goals and your objective as a leader? Are you being effective? Then we will talk about one of my favorite leadership models. This is the one that I did my research, is servant leadership. But then when I was done with all of that, I was challenged that every time that I finish a class, it was always very difficult to give a takeaway to the student. Something the student can say, okay, I've studied all this leadership model, all this leadership, the classical, the contemporary, but how do I apply it in real life? That's when I came to the realization that when you look at leadership, it must be a holistic approach to leadership. And I said, okay, let me challenge myself to come up with what I call a unifying framework for effective leadership. But first, let's listen to some of the great thinkers, of the neuroscience of leadership. Because keep in mind, whenever we talk about leadership, and you'll see the difference between leadership and management later on. But what these people research the brain, the neuroscience, understanding that leadership, when you're dealing with people, it's all about emotion. We are first and foremost emotional being for being a rational being. And for us, most as African or African American people from African descent, we know that we are spiritual people, and our spiritual transcend any other science or technology, whatever you have, But again, this is how they put it. Great leaders, what do they have in common? They inspire through hope and vision. Here you can write there, for those that believe in Christ, that was the teaching of Christ. For those that believe in Muhammad or Moses, that was their teaching. Or even those that believe in Mother Teresa or Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, this was, Martin Luther King. What else they do? They spread compassion. empathy and caring, being able to put yourself on the shoes of other people. But most importantly, they are mindful. And this is they are aware, because being mindful is at any time understanding the state of your emotion. And I said, how your emotion affect you. And how do you regulate those emotions to make sure that you create what we call a resonant relationship to the opposite with dissonant relationship? Because if you don't connect positive with people, if you trigger, unhealthy, emotion, then people shut down. But as a leader, you always want to inspire people. And how do they do it? They create what I call the resonant relationship, which are positive relationship. And the neuroscience of leadership have demonstrated that actually, when you have the relationship, you can see that people brain, mind is open up, and they are willing to absorb, they are happy, they're pleased, and they trigger the creative aspect of them. Therefore, again, as a leader, if you don't allow people to be who they are, to embrace who they are, how would they give the best version of them? But this is one of the quotes that I read. The first time I saw it, when Maya Angelou said it, I was just shaken because it got to the core of leadership. When she said, it is by observation that in the future, they will not remember what you said. They will not even remember what you did, but they always remember how you made them feel. That's why as leader, we have to be very mindful, very careful of what we say to people. And you'll see later on, when you look at the three main elements of leadership, that's when you see the importance of triggering positive relationship. Now, let's try to define what is leadership. This is one that is used everywhere. Leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want them because they want to do it. Yes, we agree. When Eisenhower, that's fine. But look at what John Maxwell said, that people do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is as a leader. It doesn't matter how brilliant, smart you are. When you listen to Professor Bakayogo the other day, what really, stayed with me, it wasn't what he was saying, but it was the passion behind it, the desire. You can see that he really want to help. He wasn't trying to show off. He's a professor, and we know he's smart. But you can see insisting, trying to help these people, these students, to be the best version. Let them know that, your potential is infinite. Don't let he was touching into the basic emotion to make you believe that how great you are, about your greatness, not about your shortcomings and your weaknesses. Because I'll tell you, we all have weaknesses. But guess what? Our strengths always outweigh our weaknesses. We can always compensate for our weakness. Let's not focus on those shortcomings. Let's look at what we do best. Now, I try to come up with, I would say, a compromise definition of leadership, because when I saw that they were saying the leadership is simply influence, and it was repeated in many, many textbooks, I felt very uncomfortable, because I said to myself, if leadership is simply influence, then Hitler was a great leader. He influenced a lot of people. There are a lot of evil people that cult people, that get people to do bad things. They influence them. We have our own share of example. But if that's really influence, then we have a problem. That's when I said, maybe we can expand the definition of the must voluntarily want to perform. But whatever they do, they must be very passionate. They want to enjoy it. What you want them to do, but to do what? Not for you as a leader to achieve your goals, your agenda, but to achieve a common purpose. But it doesn't say there. If that common purpose is not for the greater good, I do not think that is leadership. This is my own take. People might agree or might disagree, but I truly believe a leader, whatever they do, it should be for the common purpose and for the greater good. Now, this is going to go quick, but just for the student, we always talk about the difference between leadership. Is leadership management, and what the difference? Drucker said this a long time ago, doing things right, whereas leadership is doing the right thing. This is not what Peter Drucker intended when he said this. He just said management is doing things right. As a manager, you do things right, but leadership is doing the right thing. Did they are mutually exclusive? I don't think so. And you'll see later on why, if you look at the roots for the word leadership, it's lead, which means to go, to travel. It's just movement. It be a quest for a new order of things. See the challenge about being a leader. You are to the unknown. You are going to uncharted territory, unseeable. That part make leadership. Now look at the roots for the word management. It says it maintain. It means that you maintain its order, you organize and you control. And you see the key difference. Here, managing system, processes. But here you don't think so. Because as a leader, if you want to take people to new height, to new direction, achieve something that they can do on their own, but you also need to put in place a system. Professor Bakay gave you a system that you can use to master any subject. Yes, he inspired you, by just sharing his experience, as a reference. You just listen to him and say, oh, I want to, when I grow up, I'm an old man, but when I grow, I want to be like Professor Bakayoko. Just imagine all the young kids. That's what we're looking for as a leader. Be able to inspire, to motivate, tools to get where, and that way, your system, processes, you need that. But leadership is to take people to different heights. And you can see, where management, I'm not going to spend time, is planning, organizing, controlling. And by the way, if those that do management, they used to define management
Dr. Meng, I don't know if you see my hand up or not.
Program. I saw many textbooks written by doctor, professor, and I didn't agree with them. But because they have the title doctor, I said, you don't have the credibility. But what I'm saying to you, mostly the student, it doesn't matter who wrote it. These things, scholarly work, science, the beauty about science is not the fact that it's not irrefutable, but it is how whatever system, theory you have there can resist to any tentative to falsification. But don't say that because, this has been tested, look at the Newman theory, and I will leave that to Bakayoko. But look at even Einstein, today with quantum physics, quantum mathematics, things that we thought that were parameters that we cannot change has become variable. And therefore be open-minded. Whatever you see, do not be afraid, disagree, and go and research it. Try to find your own solution. Now, the one thing I wanted to remind everybody here is that we have to understand the most important thing is that leadership is a process. It is a holistic approach. You start with the leader, but a leader makes sense only if you have followers. Now, I said, they said, if you have nobody to lead yourself. I think that if you turn and there's nobody around you, maybe you're taking a nice walk, but we lead people. Let's be realistic. Leaders need followers. But then, are you doing leadership in a vacuum? No, there's a context, and the context will affect the process. But there's also something that we always have to remember. If, let's say, I will pick on Professor Bakayoko, for the whole thing. say to you, this system, if you use it, there's nothing you cannot learn. Then sure, that's why I'm bad in math. Why he's saying that? I'm never gonna learn math. Then you use his system, you use his method. Guess what? You start seeing improvement. That outcomes, the positive improvement, say, wow, man, this guy, he's a genius. This guy, he's a prophet. Now you see, not only you believing in him, but you start to believe in yourself. The outcome is modifying the entire process. But guess what? If, let's say I talk to you about leadership and you go, you try it, nothing happened. Man, Dr. Mbengue didn't know what I was talking about. That's it. You're done with me. Because the outcome has negatively impacted the relationship. Therefore, in leadership, just keep in mind, be very mindful about the outcomes. What you're doing, what is the result and the impact on people. And keep also in mind, you're dealing with emotional people, not just rational people. Three things. When you look at leadership, I always say that it's like you making a drink or you cooking a meal. It's all depend, if it's a meal, who you serving it to? Know that what they like, what they don't like. But also, what ingredient do you have? What do you have accessible? Because it's not always infinite, And if you have three key, I always talk about chebujan. I'm from Senegal, and we like our jollof rice. I keep telling students, if you're making chebujan, what do you need? Chebujan, chep is rice, jen is fish, and we add vegetables on that. And I said, okay, I'm definitely going to need rice. I'm going to need the fish, and I'm going to need the vegetable. Those are my three main ingredients. That's it. You're making a drink. That's it. But when it comes to leadership, if you break it down to the first principle, which basically tell us what are the fundamental truths about leadership. As we said earlier, you leading, there's a sense of movement. You're taking people somewhere. And we are expecting that it is someplace better than where they are. That's why they're going to follow you. It's the vision. It's the ambition. That's the key element. If you can't take people somewhere that's better where they are, they're not going to follow you. Look at all the leaders. You started with Christ, the prophet, all the great leaders. They were taking people to a better place. Therefore, they had the vision. They have an ambition. And then what do? Why would I follow someone? I was used in the military. I keep saying that you are the captain, the colonel, and then you are ambushed. They are firing left and right. And you turn to your people that are scared, said, follow me. Why would they follow you? They must trust you. And as a leader, the first thing also after having a vision, you need to build trust. And you need to maintain that trust and to grow that trust. Because keep in mind, you don't force to lead people. People give you permission to lead them. Unfortunately, many of our quote unquote people call, they are in leadership position, I will say, believe that they have entitled to that position. This is something they have earned. They have the right to, they forgot. People give them permission to lead them. And for that, they can always take it back. And we have seen dictators that overnight, their entire system crumbled. They couldn't even believe it. But remember, you need to build trust, to maintain it and to grow it. And the way you do it is based on who you are. It's based on, what you do. It's based on really where you think that you're going to be taking people, but it's how much people trust you. Trust is fundamental. And the third element is that if you're taking people to new height, to a vision, and the vision tend to be what you call a great dream, because what his name, Robert Greeley said that nothing great happened without first a great dream. And that great dream can be the vision. Then you build trust. But anytime you try to do something difficult, look at those that were with Christ, the struggle, those were with the Prophet Muhammad that get killed when they wanted to follow this new religion. Those were with Martin Luther King. How many were killed? Himself being killed. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, exposing herself to the worst diseases where she knew there was no cure, but never back down for helping the poor. They need to find a way to motivate people. A great leader know how to motivate. And that's what makes them different. I'm not going to dwell on that. You can find definition of vision, but I like what Seneca said. There are no good road for those who don't know, their port. If you don't know where you're going, you're not going to be able to get there. Basically it's a starting point. You have a vision. Where do you want to go? But it is good also to make sure that you can go there. And the reason it is important as a leader, when you have these goals, you need to make sure they are accessible. Because if they are too difficult or impossible, you might discourage people. It's good to know where do you want to go, but also know that where you can go. Building trust, I will go quickly on that because anyone, knows, about trust. But we always know that whenever we talk about trust, doesn't matter if you're trusting your colleague, you're trusting a friend, you're trusting, your parents, you're trusting your teacher. It is this whole notion that, yes, I'm taking risk, but this person is not going to hurt me. And that is why people are very hesitant to give their trust, but again, why they always take it back quickly. These are what I would call the 5 dimensions of trust: integrity, competencies, consistency, loyalty, and openness. These are key, but you see, we started with integrity. And that's why you will see that I insisted on a leadership model called ethical leadership, because a leader that is not ethical, is not going to go far. Competencies. When you're leading people, why would I follow my captain in a war or my commander? Because I know that he or she is competent, that he has the skill to lead us to be successful in an organization. Why would you believe in your professor? Because you know that they have the skill, they have the competencies. If you're not competent, I would say that either you go get the skill that you need or you have no business of leading. Consistency. Again, you see the importance of trust. Being consistent, meaning that people can expect what to get. And somebody said that it is what you do, I do what I say, and I say what I do. People want to be able to believe in what you are saying. If you don't mean to do it, why would you say it? Because when you say something, you make a commitment. And there's this whole notion that, yes, we should, as a leader, the first time that the president, Abdoulaye Wade, said publicly, wax waxet. Wax waxet is I said it, waxet, I take it back. When he said that he was not going to do a third term. When he saw I was a friend, I said, President Wade is done. He said, why? I said, he just violated one of the fundamental rules of leadership. He reneged on his own commitment, and it destroyed trust, loyalty, absolutely. But most important, a leader needs to be open. Now, motivation is critical, and I will go through just some motivational models. And for the student, again, you can always, it refers to the process for a person. Once you know the effort you're making, can energize, direct, and sustain towards attaining a goal. As you can see, there are 3 elements: the energy that you put, the direction, and the persistency. Now, one of the earlier leader motivational model that we all know is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as Maslow said that, of course, if the ultimate state for a person is self-actualization, if you want to motivate them, how are you going to start with self-actualization, which are the first, make sure they have the basic need are taken care of. Physiologic. If you're starving, why would you try to self-actualize? Or a sim need. It says take care of their basic need, food, water. The second is safety. Because somebody is not safe, and you are talking about how I want to help you to to attain your highest potential. They said, you know what, I don't have to, I need safe place to be. I don't have time for that. But belonging. You see, Maslow was able to identify the basic need, the physiological need, and the self-fulfillment need. Of course, this is a very powerful, motivational model, the Maslow's pyramid of need. However, let's look at it closely. I know people from different groups that they don't care about their basic need. They even don't care about their safety need. If they want to belong to a group or they willing to do whatever it takes to sacrifice just to get to the other stage. Meaning there are instances that people that are very spiritual. This is the basic, it doesn't even concern them because they trust in their faith. Therefore, we as Africans, we should understand that if this model is rock solid, it might not apply. Let's allow ourselves to be flexible. Say, you know what? I don't necessarily need to follow muscle hierarchy of need if I want to motivate. I can find as a trigger, like Reverend Palm can use the Bible, the text, to make you ignore these two first steps, to start working directly in your self-actualization. That's the power that we have. Let's use it. Let's not limit ourselves to this Western approach of model that is based on their environment and their reality. We are who we are. Let's embrace who we are. The McGregor, and this is also helping, leaders understand that there are people that are in leadership position. They assume the worst of everybody. And then others can assume the best of everyone. And as a leader, if you assume the worst of everybody, you treat them poorly. And what he's saying is that always focus on looking at the best on people, on their potential. But the one that I always want people to spend more time is Hasberg, motivation and hygiene approach. For a long time, scholar and researcher, even professional, have thought that lack of dissatisfaction mean that you are satisfied. This is wrong. When you say that, I give them a good salary, they are in good working condition, why are not they satisfied? No. You gave them the minimum for them to not to be dissatisfied. But they're not satisfied. We thought that money can solve everything. But until Herzberg did his research, and he was able to identify that there are some action that you take working condition, it's only contribute for lack of dissatisfaction. Not being dissatisfied is not that you are satisfied. There are other element. And that's where they start focusing on achievement, recognition. The work itself, make it fun. Advancement, personal growth, those are other elements that come to satisfaction. And one thing is crystal clear. Research have demonstrated. People give you their best. People are more creative when they feel satisfied, when they are happy, they are inspired. But if you just give them the basic, or they're going to give you their muscle, but they're never going to give you their full brain. And people create when they're at a state of satisfaction. The rest, Adam theory for equity, meaning also when you're making people work, whatever you do is the notion of fairness. If people don't think that what you're offering, is not fair, and then they give you 100%. And this motivation theory, and Victor Groom also expectancy theory, telling you that people look at the effort they're going to, perform, the effort they're going to give. But then they look at the performance. Are they really able? If what you heard from Professor Vakayeko makes sense, but you ask yourself, well, if I do all this effort, I don't think that I will be able to master it. Then you're not going to spend time. They need to know that the effort they're going to be performing, it will actually help them to perform. And then the reward will be worth it. That's the only way that as a leader, but you're not going to ask people to make effort. So, but in the end, you might be able to master or you might not be. It's say, wait a minute, if you're not sure, about what you're telling me, why should I make the effort? It has to be the effort, but also you have to make sure that when they provide that effort, they'll be able to perform. And when they perform, they will be rewarded. That's, as a leader, what you need to do to motivate people. Now, whenever we talk about leadership, we always associate leadership with power, the source of power. And again, I'm just going, this is for the student that perhaps those that are being exposed for the first time to leadership, some of you guys will be very bored with what I'm saying, but I call it the fundamental. It is not a leadership, it is the for introduction, and hopefully you understand the source of power. Leaders influence, yes. And how do you influence? We always think about power. But if you look at power, and I experienced power contradiction in my own house. My dad was a commander, a major, respected. Wherever he passed, they salute him. As a young kid, I said, well, this man, he's powerful, you have to get, oh, he is the commander's son. You always say, oh, this guy has power. They respect him. Then I come to the house, I have another boss, my mom. She runs the house, she's tough, And I said, okay. Then I look at the recipe of my mom and my dad, the pushback. Then I look at my dad when his older brother come to the house. He's like a kid. My dad is sitting there. And I said, man, this guy, he fears his older brother. And he's the one that paying for everything for his older brother. He housed the food. But when he's there, he's the boss. When my grandma was there, oh, we can mess with my dad. Because we know that there's a new sheriff in town. It's my grandma. Because my dad would not mess with us. We go to my grandma. Then I look at when my spiritual leader of my dad come to the house, my dad sit on the floor. And, you see all this. And I said, man, who's the most powerful in all of that? And then we know ultimately the most powerful there is God. But then when we look at human power, then I started to understand, but just look at this, power. You have all these force of, the position power is the power that are linked with your position. You are the president, it gives you legitimacy. You have the power to reward people, then you can influence. You have the power to negatively sanction people. You see, you look at all this kind of power. If you are the president, you have the power to pardon. Guess what happened if you were impeached? Do you still have that power? No. If you lose the election, do you still have that power? No. The power that we have was position power. And that power doesn't go that far, But then you look at other source of power, it's personal power. When you listen to Professor Bakayaga, you don't care about if he's a dean, he's a professor. You listen to what he's saying and you see the utility of what he's telling you. He has expert power. That power, he can use that to influence you. You will be willingly to follow him and follow his guidance. Reverend powers. You see, if you look at those spiritual leaders, you want to be like them because who they are, what they represent. This power, you always keep that power. That's why we said as a leader, try to focus on your personal power that you will always have, not to so much leverage your position power. And every time that you use your position power, you're borrowing power because you can no longer influence people. Then you threaten them or you want to bribe them or you want to say, oh, I'm the boss, you do as I say. But whenever you do that, you are revealing weaknesses because you're showing that I'm powerless. But if you have expert power or your reverent power, you don't do anything because people willingly will follow you and that will last forever. And as I said, position power, personal power, try to develop your personal power. That will help you, I'm going to try to go to the three main, what you call the classical theory. There, and I will just summarize it, and you'll see you have leadership is divided in what we call the classical theory and the contemporary theory. The classical theory is basically tells you who's the leader, the threat approach. The second classical theory is what we call the behavior theory. How do they behave? And the third approach, classical theory, is what we call the contingency theory, in which circumstance leadership is taking place. And I will quickly go through the, I'm not going to just understand that the threat approach about who the leader is, has been developed by all these people. You see, first they look at it by intelligence, alertness. All they're saying at that time is there is exceptional people that have the right to lead because they have personal characteristics to give them the right. And that's what you talked about, the great man theory. Look at that nonsense. The great man theory, and we've been led by women, in ancient time. And that theory said that only a few men that are extraordinary, strength, tall, big, can be leading. But that theory did not last that long. That's why they changed it to the threat approach, meaning the personality. Whenever you see this, it says not everybody can lead. There's only a few people that have this special characteristic. But we all know that leadership is learnable. Those skills, you can learn it because you already have it within you. It's embedded into you. All you do is to unlock it. That's why the third approach has limited. The behavioral theory basically said that it is how the leader behave. And earlier, they thought that either leaders focus on the production, that's mean they behave like manager, or they focus on the people. They are very people-oriented. And they did not understand that you can be both. The early leadership theory of behavioral theory assumed the School of Michigan, the School of Ohio, they all believe that either you are people-oriented, what they call consideration, or you are production-oriented, what they call initiating structure. Here, then you see the manager just focusing on system and processes, or here you see, the human part of it is only focusing. But what I said, if you only focus on people, you're not getting anything done. But if you only focus on the system and processes, not encouraging people, you're also not getting things done. That's when Blake and Morton realized, wait a minute, we can be both. We can be, that's what we call the management grid. Blake and Morton is bringing a middle ground, saying that a leader, if you see middle of the road, you are concerned for result, but you are also concerned for the people. To be effective, you always have to keep in mind when you are leading, yes, you're dealing with people, people's emotion, but also you are responsible for creating a system, processes for people to achieve, to have result. And just to close that debate, as you can see, the threat, you see, it's not interactive. You have the leader at the top, height, intelligence, fluency, and then the follow. The process said, no. There's an interaction. The way that the leader affects the follower the leader. We also remember we talk about the context. The context will affect also the process. And also the question I say about context, if Nelson Mandela was successful because of who he was, but he was in, that defined his leadership, and also the result he was able to do. That's why I always look at leadership. The contingency theory is saying that what makes leaders successful, it is not necessarily their personal characteristic. It's not necessarily how they behave, but it's primarily the context in which leadership is taking place. Is that there are some situations where certain leadership style tend to be more effective than others. That's all it's saying. Is that if you are the board of director, you are hiring a CEO, make sure you understand that right now, in which situation are we, and try to find a person which dominant leadership style fit that situation. And you'll see in textbook, they talk about contingency. It used to be contingency theory, which is that your dominant style match the situation. And then you'll see situational approach, which is something different, meaning that you are the leader, have to understand the people that you are leading, what they need, and you adapt just your leadership style to their need. Contingency, you just use your dominant style that fit that context. Situational, not the situation in which we are, but the actual situation of the people that you're leading. Here you are asked to be very flexible, but on the other hand, as a contingency, we just said, this is your dominant style, fit the situation, you use that. And here you can see that the two people did a wonderful job about Hershey and Blanchard, about the situational approach to leadership. And by the way, Blanchard has done so much research on Christ and leadership. He has published many, many books, illustrated all the leadership model through the way that Christ led. And as you can see, this approach to leadership is very practical, and it's been used by many consulting firms to train people in organization. They were able to define 4 quarters. But if you look at the bottom, these are the development level, high, moderate, and low. But then you see directing behavior. And then you say supporting behavior, what the leader is doing. Here, if you have the beginning S1, you have people that are new. Like in this case, if we're talking about students that have never done leadership, we start by directing them what I'm doing, telling them, because they don't have the chance to ask questions, and I'm telling them what to do, what it is. But I'm also being very supportive because they started. They don't know the job. There you were training, you're showing them what to do. Then once they start getting comfortable on being able to perform the task, then you still directing them, but you still also very supportive. This is the support here is very low because they don't need to do anything. They just have to apply what you're telling them. But here they're testing, they're trying, they're failing. But if you read the 1 minute manager is saying that doesn't matter how much they messed up. Let them do whatever they say, but look for 1 minute where they do something right and you congratulate them on that. Say, great, you nailed it. Exceptional. That will empower them, that will motivate them. Then you go, once now they are comfortable, they know what they're doing, and they are more committed, more engaged. You see, you can support them, but you don't tell them what to do because they tend to know. You don't micromanage. But once you know that they are comfortable, they are self-sufficient, they know what they're doing, you delegate. Here you direct, then you coach, you support, and you delegate. This is a very effective, realistic, leadership approach that you can apply in your real life. There's another contingent approach, the flat goal. What we say is very simple. Is as a leader, if you're taking people to a new destination, you must know the way. Earlier, I said a leader is challenged to know the unknowable and to see the unseeable. That's the part of being a leader. There are obstacles. You have to be upfront to remove those obstacles, to clear the path, to allow them. You define the goal, try for the path, remove obstacles, and provide support. And Nelson Mandela said it, he said, a leader is front when there's danger. When it's time to celebrate, he's behind. But as a leader, you need to be up front. Then you have to come in the middle to see how people are doing. Then you go all the way in the back to see if there's someone lagging, because you are the shepherd leader. You are the steward. You want to make sure they're all on the right path. But most importantly, you show the way, you show the direction, but you lead the way. You lead by example. And that's what this story is telling us. The contemporary theory, I always start with authentic leadership for basic truth. For me, I will never follow a fake person. If you're not authentic, why would I follow you? People like people that are authentic, original. Nobody wants a copy. As a leader, if you look at the three main elements of authentic leadership, is self-awareness, knowing yourself and your emotion, self-regulation. Yeah, yes, we are human. We get angry. We get frustrated. But do I, because I'm having a bad day with my wife, she's visiting with me. I'm here. She's doing other things around there. When I show fuss, I said, no, I have to control my emotion. Let's do whatever she needs to do because she's on vacation. I'm the one that teaching. Now, it's like you don't take on your negative emotion on other people. You always need to be aware of those emotions, self-regulate, and the ethical behavior. And as you can see, there are 5 main touches of authentic leadership. First is, your purpose, and it draws on your passion because you have a purpose. You'll do whatever it takes to get them there. Moses, for how long? All the challenges. There's a purpose. You're going to lead those people, those Jews, to the promised land. Whatever it takes. As a leader, if you don't have that, you shouldn't be leading. You still have to have a purpose. But whatever you do, I always believe that the end never justifies the mean. It's always do it the right way, no whatever it costs you. And that's what helped them behave. Their values they have, the rightnesses, help them behave properly, behave ethically. But they do understand that in this journey as a leader, it's not a one-man, one-woman show. This is as a team, as a group, you're leading people. And how do you do that? By building relationship. You must be connected people, because without that, you can't do anything. But again, we talked about trust. How do you build trust? By being self-disciplined. That shows consistency, because people would know what to expect. If they always you negate on your word, you don't respect your commitment, you keep changing your mind. But ultimately, what makes great leaders is their heart. It's their heart, their compassion. And this, you don't need to insist on that, because I always say to people, we always communicate, at a lower level, at a spiritual level. And at that level, it's only true because it's all godly. It's all godly. What I say something, it's faith. You'll know that you can feel me, but you think that this is true, this is sincere. And I was people telling me, how do you know that you're being authentic? I say, it's very simple. Ask yourself, am I being sincere? If the answer is yes, yes, you are being authentic. Now, of course, being authentic sometimes may lead you to being vulnerable, but it's also part of leadership because we are not perfect. Sometimes we have challenges, we have scares, and ethical leadership the same way. I think the ethical leadership go to the fact that, when you're leading people, you must have integrity, you must have honesty, you need to be fair. But people, the first number one element for all leaders, I would say, you gotta respect people. Because people, you don't respect them, they don't care who you are. You don't respect them, they don't respect you. You must also be willing to serve them because that's why you are there. But you also must show justice. But you also need to be honest. But most important, an ethical leader always look at the community as a whole, even the environment. Whatever they do, make sure that it is holistic. Now, you have this notion of transactional leadership and transformational leadership. For a long time, we heard that the best leadership model was transformational leadership. You see so many books on transformational leadership. But also over to transactional leadership. And the transactional leadership, model, basically what it's saying is that if you want, as a leader, people to do something, you must also be willing to compensate them fairly. You must be willing to create the condition for them to be there. Remember when we talked about the health leadership, the hygiene and motivation approach. What do I need to do as a leader to make sure that my people are not dissatisfied? You are being transactional. I have to pay them a decent salary. I have to create the condition. But that is just transactional. It doesn't go beyond making great effort to do something exceptional. But to do that, you need to go to the second part of leadership, transformational. And when we talk about transformational leadership, people talk about the 4 I's. Idealize influence as a leader, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. When you listen to Professor Bakayoko, you can look at all 4 I checked. When you listen to what he did as a, Saturday, we clearly the last Saturday, idealized influence, that you just say, man, I want to be like him because he galvanized, something, inspirational motivation, by showing you what you can be. That's just exceptional, but then intellectual simulation. He was intellectually simulating your brain, teaching you something that is accessible. But most importantly, what he was delivering can resonate for each single person. You have professor in that group, we have student, we have CEOs, everybody find that he was talking to me. And that's what a leader, do. And not gonna come back to that. And you'll find this in some of the books. They show, the transformational and the transactional. And as you can see, under the 4 I's, but at the bottom, they talk about the laissez-faire, laissez-aller. When you are there, you don't tell them it's good, you don't tell it's bad. I think that this is absence of leadership. This is non-leadership. Laissez-faire is the French word. If you're there, you don't say anything, you don't do anything, you're not leading. Transactional, management by exception is passive. It's like just sit there where they make a mistake, then you punish them. You don't want to do that. But management by exception active is before they make the mistake, you can correct them. And contingency reward, the kind of thing that you want them to do, you reward them to do it. It's transactional, and you can see the relationship. But the transformational, now it's no longer transactional. You are helping people grow. You are helping people to be the best version of themselves. And you can see why transformational leadership is so popular. all great leaders, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, those people, you go to Christ, all those spiritual leaders, they transform people. Christ was a disciple. The Prophet Muhammad was his companion. They transform them to become leaders, to shape nation, future generation. And that's what is expected of a leader. How do you help people become the best version of themselves? And then the shared leadership. The thing is, you cannot do it all by yourself. It's never going to work. That's why I think that the first job of a leader is to start developing others, to assure succession, that there are others. We know that Moses pointed directly to Joshua, you would lead them. You know that Christ directed us towards his disciple. We know that the Prophet Muhammad directed towards his companion. Many as a leader, you go to the, Jack Welch, prepare his succession. Great leaders, they train them, give them the tool, because once you allow people to be the best version, guess what? You as a leader, you just replicated yourself. You created as a leader like you delegate. And now, if you have one organization, those same people can run it, you can do something else, or they can go create as an organization. That's why, that's what, and shared leadership is also critical in the sense that if you share the leadership within the organization, in each stage, look at who's the most qualified to run it, you let them lead in that area. It motivates. If you feel that, hey, I'm leading now, I'm part of the leadership, they share with me the responsibility, it motivates, it's also fair, and everybody, kind of contribute, towards achieving, the stated goals and objectives. Now, I always say servant leadership because I'm biased. I did my research on servant leadership. I wrote a book on servant leadership. But the reason why I picked servant leadership is when I first discovered the principle of servant leadership, and I read about servant leadership, I was with one of my spiritual guides, Sheikh Salim Bak, and everything that I was reading, I was experiencing with the man. Listen, for me, what he was talking about, I lived that with this man, even the healing, all of that. It was not abstract. It was very realistic. That's why I said, I want to, and then I saw, Christ, the prophets, all of that. And I said, this is, something that, this is what Greenleaf actually did an essay in the 70s. I'll try to, this is last section. Anyway, I said the great leader is seen as servant first. And this simple fact that he sees himself as servant is his or her greatness, because they don't care about being famous, they don't care about being recognized, they don't care about making money, all they care about is how can I serve? And Martin Luther said, if you can serve, you can be a great leader. As you can see, it's accessible. That's why I believe that we are all, and what he did, and you see the word term servant and leadership. Technically, when you hear the term servant leadership, there's some kind of contradiction. That's why in the 1971st who wrote it, all the scholars said that this is not leadership. This entire leadership theory, concept, approach was dismantled, was rejected by the leadership, intellectual and professor field. In the 1970s, you never heard of it. And even when I was trying to do my dissertation, I did a quantitative research, doing a correlation study on the relationship between leadership style based on civil leadership and organizational health. I was advised that the entire theory is being contested. Why would you do a research for something that they said that it's not valid? But I said, I want to prove that it's valid. And what drove me is because I've seen it, somebody applying it as my spiritual guide. I've seen it on the teaching of Christ. I've seen it on the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad. And I went to a faith-based organization to collect my data. And thank God I was able to find a very tight correlation. If time allowed, I can show it. But this whole notion of servant leadership, he knew the connotation. But this is why he was rejected, the second paragraph. He said, I did not get the notion of the servant as leader from conscious logic. Rather, it came to me as intuitive insight as I contemplated Leo. Intuitive insight was why the academic community rejected his theory. But you and I know that we are spiritual beings. Sometimes intuition is actually something higher. that transcend, rationality. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, I just felt that, they said, oh, we are like angel. Man, I'm here on the 37th floor in New York. Because we are made and we have the cup of angel, I open my window, I say, I'm going to go fly. Something asking me that I can fly. No, I'm not asking you to do that. Intuition is something, but you can hear it, that there's something very sure that's saying that, hey, you're making the right decision. That now this is how, whenever you hear, and I was shocked when I heard about the academic community reject servant leadership because they said that there's no clear definition, lack of clarity on the concept. I said that was dishonest by those that wrote that, because this is what the man wrote in 1970. He said, the best test, if somebody is not defining the concept, by telling you the best test of what I'm offering is, do those who are served grow as people? Do they become, while being served, healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely to become servants themselves? And what is the effect on the less privileged in society? Will they benefit from, or at least will they not be harmed by it? And you say that this is not credible. I have never seen a more complete and complete definition of leadership model. But what happened is that Greenleaf wanted to challenge the establishment that believed that leadership started at the top. He flipped the leadership pyramid, putting the top at the bottom and the bottom at the top. And this scholar didn't like that, because in this model, the leader is at the bottom of the pyramid, because you are here to serve. You are the worker. You are here to serve, to make sure that these people, they grow healthier, wiser, smarter, more autonomous, to become themselves their leader. And this was a revolution at the time, and they couldn't see it. That's why today, you see, with time, now the top best 100 companies to work for in the world, they all claim that they are using principle of servant leadership. And I'll just quickly tell you the 4 pillars of servant leadership, which was combined based on Greenleaf's writing by Spitzer in 1998. And he said the first pillar is service to others, holistic approach to work, meaning that when you design work, you shouldn't just make people be like input to the process, but people should enjoy the work. We exist for the work, but the work also exists for us. You have must work enjoyable, which approach to work. Promote a sense of community, but most importantly, the sharing of power in decision making. This is what servant leaders do. They don't care about the power. They distribute it. They want to empower everybody. And I will just finish with the 10 characteristics of servant leadership. The first one, he said that a servant leader must be somebody who's willing to listen. That's the first thing they do. They are good listeners, but they have empathy. Always put themselves on the shoes of other people, to live what others are living. Healing, in a sense that they know that we are all broken spirit, that when we do good, that we need others. The leader needs people. He needs his follower. By doing good, it makes him whole. The follower also need the leader. We all make whole each other. We complete each other. That's the healing process of servant leadership. Awareness, understanding their emotion. But persuasion, they do not force people. They do not use legitimate power. Christ never said that, I am the Son of God, I am God, just do what I say. Always try to convince people. Even when he was asked about the lady that they wanted to stone, what would you do? And he knows the people right. The book said, if you do this adultery, this is the punishment. And he was asked, what would you do? Now, he could have appealed to their compassion, but someone said, we don't care about that. You teach us that this is what the book teaches. What would you do? And that's one thing that leaders should always need to learn from. Of course, he had a solution, but to teach us, when you are in those ethical dilemma, you see, sometimes you have 2 rights. How do you handle the 2 rights? That's what we call ethical dilemma. And what he said, that's when he went down, seemed to be riding on the sand, and then pause, withdraw. As a leader, you don't have to give the answer all the time. Take the time to withdraw, to think about it, pray about it. Me, I was a forecaster at General Motors headquarters. When I was doing forecasting, I don't know how many cars they can sell the next day. They want me to tell how many cars to sell the next 5 years. I always, before I do my forecasting, I always close my office and I pray. And I say, God, Lord, I have no idea what they're asking me to do, but you know everything. Guide me. And that's how I always start with my forecasting. And I was one of the top forecasters. It wasn't because I was smart, but I was smart enough to know that I wasn't in charge. There was somewhere. But what Christ did ask, I believe Reverend Pam corrected me, if the one that have never seen passed the first stone.
That's right.
And guess what happened? Everybody, he came up with a very original. So, and as a leader, you will be facing this ethical dilemma. But what you want to is to pause, to withdraw, and what they call adjust. And sometimes you have to pivot. Persuasion is your key. But the key challenging thing is conceptualizing. As a leader, you're taking people in something that they have never been. You must be able to conceptualize. You know, Professor Bakayoko did not just wake up one day and come up with this whole thing. He took the time to conceptualize. To study it. But because he was there, he was in that situation. He knows your situation. Conceptualization, foresight. You know, you see, there's a difference between strategy and foresight. You know, when we talk about strategy, you decide to create your own future. You say that, you know, in the next 5 years, you want to be the number one leader in our segment, whatever. You are creating your own future. You decide that this year, in 5 years, I want to be working with the 514 company in America. And of you students can say that, and you will be if you want to. You want to create your own future. But foresight is a little bit different. You say, you know what? I know that AI is going to be big. You know, I know that, today I'm doing a STEM program. I am convinced that in the continent, this is something going to be needed. You know, because of that, I want to have a job in the 4500 because of what will happen. You are anticipating on the future. And because you are anticipating on the future, you can see something that most of us don't see. You are positioning yourself to take advantage of that. Strategy is you create a feature, but when you create a feature, you always need to have foresight. And what you see here is strategy need foresight, but foresight help you to strategize. These are like, if you want to move forward, you put your right foot and your left foot. They work hand in hand. That's mean understanding foresight about anticipating on the future and strategy about creating your own future is critical. As a leader, you do also stewardship, you know, the path goal. You know, you're the shepherd leader. But the one thing that sets you apart is commitment to the growth of people. Servant leader will never tell you that what I'm asking you to do is good for the company. It's going to make us make more money. It's going to make us become the leader in our segment. No. They always say to you, we want to help you grow. We want to help you be the best version of yourself. But most important, why they do that? They want you to go to the last part. We want to build the community. It's not about the organization. It's about the community as a whole. And we talk about community, it could be your house, you know, your neighborhood, you know, your town, your country, your continent, but the entire world. That's what makes servant leadership, and I think they shape culture. Value is what is their core belief, and this is what makes them so exceptional. In the case of servant leadership, a leader's motivation derives from this core egalitarian belief that they are no better than those whom they lead. I see so many leaders today, you listen to them speaking to us, they're arrogant. Sometimes you say, do they despise us? We had a leader in Senegal toward the end. When I listened to him speak, you see that he was angry because he knew that it was over for him. He basically despised the people because they wanted an alternative. But these people, they believe that they are no better than whom they lead. And just to go back, Christ said this and said, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as ransom for many. For me, he's one of the, if somebody said they coin it, I said that, in Islamic teaching, the Prophet Muhammad always say that, Sayyid al-Khawmi Hadimuhum, the servant of the people is their leader. And he did say to one of his collaborators, that not only he said that you are a shepherd to each other and you all are responsible for your farm, but he said to one of his collaborators, Muaz bin Said Jabal, to make things easy and fun for the follower to win their heart. And there's a surah in the Quran where God is saying to the prophet, I'm glad that you were kind to them. If you were not, they would have not followed you. Meaning, even as a prophet, if you're not kind to people, if not respected to people, they're not supposed to follow you. That's why, as a leader, we always, in my book, I did, because I wanted to highlight the importance, in this nonsense about religion, see, the parts of leadership, Abrahamic religion, and you can see the complementarity, and the teaching is the same. It is not, but I will just close with what Dr. Stephen Covey, that everybody knows, is one of the most enlightened writer or, motivational, in terms of business, anything that thinking about humanity. This is what he wrote. So leaders are learning that this kind of empowerment, which is servant leadership, is one of the key principles that, based on practice, not talk, will be the deciding point between an organization enduring success or its eventual extension. This coming from and I will close with, based on everything that I just said, to wrap it up, I wanted to see, okay, if I wanted to talk to someone that had never applied leadership, I talk about the classical theory, I talk about the contemporary, he's gonna look at me and said, how do I apply it? And I said, okay, let me try to create a framework, because I didn't see it. I saw the need for myself and for others. I said, the first thing is, I believe in servant leadership. It must be my anchor. Your posture, whatever you do, try to be a servant leader, to serve others. But in order to do that, you always got to start somewhere. You must be authentic on whatever you do. I said, understand authentic leadership, the sincerity aspect, that I'm not doing it to gain money, to gain fame. I'm just trying to serve. But then, if you follow it because you are authentic, you have a new message. But once they discover that you are not ethical, they will walk away. That's mean, try to be an ethical leader. But then I said, once they're with you and they are facing challenges, how do you maintain them? Is a situational leadership, meaning understand the situation of your individual followers. What do they need? Remember when we talked about people-oriented or consideration? That's exactly what we expect here. To look at it, we talked about, the S4, where you direct them, low supportive, then, you keep directing it with a, high supportive. Then you starting now that just supporting them because they know what to do, and finally you delegate them. You are developing them individually because they're not all at the same level. Those that know what they're doing, you treat them accordingly. It is the situational leader, not the situation you are in, but the individual situation of your followers. Adapt to your followers. Adjust your leadership style. Don't say that, oh, I am a commanding style. You come to me, you go it my way. That's a recipe for failure. No, those that are independent, those that need support, adapt just to leadership. It is hard. And that's what leadership is. Now, the contingent leadership tells you that each situation is very unique. Each context is very unique. But sometimes your dominant leadership style is very effective in this situation. In that case, either in the group, you find someone that have the capacity, you let them lead for that situation. Or if you are hiring someone else, you try to find someone that has a dominant style. And you heard me always say dominant style, because I believe that we have many styles that we use, but we might have a dominant style. But being aware of our dominant style is a good thing, because if you are, somebody always focused on the people, but you said as a leader, need to show result, then you say, let me be aware of it. Sometimes be very strict in terms of creating, what you call structuring process and system. Part goal, you got to lead the way. You got to find obstacle and make sure you leave no one behind. Transactional, yes. You have to motivate people. You have to reward people, and then transformation, we talk about the 4I. That's when you help people grow by positive influence, by inspiration, motivation, but most importantly, by intellectual stimulation. You're helping them learn and then in their consideration. When people know that you respect them as a human being, that you are very intentional about their need and that you are here to serve them, they respond positively to you and they will follow you. Share leadership. No, you cannot do all by yourself. That leadership must be shared. Leadership must be rotated within the group. You need to empower everybody. Thank you.
Whoa. Whoa. Dr. Mench, stop sharing your screen. I'm glad you took you were not focused on the 1 hour. Okay. Any student that wants to ask a question or comment, raise your hand. I'll go to Dr. Bagayoko, Dr. Sese, then students raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Dr. Bagayoko, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm glad I didn't have to follow you. I am very glad I didn't have to follow you. This is what we call in French a magistral, un cours magistral, meaning a presentation that is complete, that is thorough, and that not only deal with the detail, but deal with the essential. And it reviewed all that was known, that is known about leadership, and synthesize it all to make it a practical thing somebody can use and do something. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
I learned there were some features of leadership I knew, but you had several other out there I did not know. And I'm going to ponder over this presentation to gain something for myself. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome, Dr. Bagayoko. I'm so glad I didn't teach this class because I was going to teach it. And when this young man wrote a book on it, I said, forget it. Let him teach it. So I'm going to go to Dr. Sese. Then we want some of the students to comment. Students, I don't know if you are able to raise your hand. Dr. Sese, a quick take from you, and then we'll give an opportunity to a couple of students.
Wow. Now, Dr. Mbengue, you inspired me. I have been a leader for many years, and I could see myself in so many of those different types of leadership. And it just goes on to say that to be a good leader, you can't just adopt one and say, this is it. Because they all have their place and they all have the positive aspects of it. It's for each of us to try and look at the situation where we find ourselves and see which type of leadership fits the situation most. Because sometimes I have been in situations where I've had to start from scratch with people who had no experience. And I've been in situations where I can say I was a leader among equals. And in those different situations, what you adopt is different. But I raise my hat to you because I think servant leadership crowns them all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sese.
Okay, let me, David, did you have something to say, a comment, or I'm going to unmute or ask everybody to unmute themselves real quick, and comment, but we will not be able to take everybody. Let's go to David. You're one of the class monitors.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Kondakanda, and thank you, Doc, for everything. It's very enlightening.
David, can you speak up a little bit? We can barely hear you.
Sorry about that. Yes, Doc, thank you very much for everything. This topic is really, really enlightening, and I'm very interested in it. So, like, the 5 dimension of this trust, like this openness. What if you possess all these 4: integrity, potency, consistency, loyalty, but you are not open up to your followers? Can you still get that leadership quality, leadership amongst them?
Dr. Mbengue, Can you hear
Can
the
you repeat the
question?
question? Yeah, I had some challenge hearing. Can you repeat the question? Mhm.
I said the building trust part because that's what I'm more interested in because as young people growing up. He mentioned something about the five dimension of trust: this integrity, competency, consistency, and loyalty. But you lack the openness. You're not open up to your followers or the people around you. Then you want to lead them. Can they still have the belief in you that they should follow because of the poor, or they shouldn't because you lack the openness?
Okay, if I let me try to rephrase it. You're talking about basically how do you build trust, or if some of your followers don't see that you are lacking some of those critical element.
Mm,
That's what.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so I think that keep in mind that leadership is learnable. The skill of leadership are learnable, and remember we said that. We always have to understand that we already have it locked into ourselves. And one of the key elements for any leader is start with really, self-awareness. You heard the term about emotional intelligence. Because of the time, I have a whole section of neuroscience of leadership, a whole section of emotional intelligence. And I think that emotional intelligence will help you, understand that we all have what we call blind spot. When you're driving, you know your blind spot. You think that there's no car, okay, is there. We as human beings, as leader, we have this blind spot. And emotional intelligence will help us. And what do we do? The famous thing that we all do. We go, we learn, we go to training, we go, we find mentors. And there's what we call the 360-degree tool of leadership assessment, where you ask people at your same level, to tell you, in terms of your leadership style, where your strengths, weaknesses, and where you need to improve. Then you go to somebody that you are leading to let them also give you feedback. Then you go to people that are above you. We always a lot of ways, or journaling. There are always methods where you can do to improve yourself. But the first step is to know that you're not perfect, that some of you have limitation, and that you also allow yourself to be vulnerable. If somebody question you or challenge you, you don't have, to respond negatively. Remember, we talk about resonant and dissonant relationship about emotion. If I said something and you're angry about it and you challenge me in this class, I have to accept it. That maybe something I said to trigger it. I shouldn't be on the defensive. I should just try to understand. And then when I leave, reflect. What did I do? Why would the student react that way? That's always the role of a leader. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable. It doesn't mean that you are weak. If somebody can add anything, Reverend Pam or Professor Bakayego or
No,
Cisse.
at this point, look, we can keep going. Servant leadership is my thing. So, Dr. Meng, I think for the next batch, we're going to make these strands 2 classes, all the strands, so that we don't rush. But the stuff that you shared, we're going to share it with the students. David, thank you for your questions. David is one of the class monitors. I am so glad, Dr. Meng, that I did not teach this class.
Oh, come on. You could have teach it better.
No, thank you so much. Next week, we are going to be back with strand 4, appropriation of emerging computer and technical skills with Professor Peter Akwichek. I want to invite everyone to Zoom in. We are streaming on YouTube. We know some of our students cannot afford the connectivity, so they're going to watch. They have assignments every week. So Dr. Meng, you're going to get to see their assignments. They're supposed to do a 1 to 3 minute video on each class after they watch it and they participate. And we don't want written assignments because we had a couple of people trying to use AI to do their assignments. We're not going to deal with that. So I really, really want to thank you on behalf of Africa's Brain Bank and on behalf of African High School Association. We are making impact, and you will see the impact. Thank you so much. And thank you, students, for zooming in. Please share this. Go watch it again on YouTube. And we're going to share information on the 2 books, Emotional Intelligence, Servant Leadership, and Cultural Intelligence. So Dr. Meng, please stay on because I need